Okay, how's it going, everybody? So we're going to read some more Lenin today. This is a militant agreement for the uprising. This was written in 1905 during the first, uprising in Russia. 12 years before the October Revolution. So let's go ahead and get into this. A militant agreement for the uprising. This was published in Verpiad number 7, February 21st, 1905. Let's go ahead and get into it. Revolucionaria Rosia, number 58, says, quote, "May the spirit of fighting unity now at long last pervade the ranks of the revolutionary socialist groups, which are torn by fratricidal animosity, and may it revive the consciousness of socialist solidarity, which has been so criminally sapped. Let us spare the revolutionary forces as much as we can and increase their effectiveness by means of a concerted attack. We have often had occasion to protest against the tyranny of the phrase among the socialist revolutionaries, and we must do so again. Why these frightful words, gentlemen, about, quote, fratricidal animosity, end quote, and so forth? Are they worthy of a revolutionary? Now, of all times, when the real fight is on, when blood is flowing, the blood of which Revolucionaria Rosia speaks in such flamboyant terms. These grotesque exaggerations about fratricidal animosity ring falser than ever. Spare the forces, say you, but surely this is done by a united, welded organization, which is at one on questions of principle, and not by lumping together heterogeneous elements. Strength is not spared, but wasted by such barren attempts at lumping, to achieve a, quote, fighting unity, end quote, indeed, and not merely in word. We must know clearly, definitely, and from experience exactly wherein and to what extent we can be united. Without this, all talk of fighting unity will be mere words. This knowledge, incidentally, comes from the very controversy, struggle, and animosity of which you speak in such frightful terms. Would it really be better if we hushed up the differences that divide vast sections of Russian public opinion and Russian socialist thought? Was it only the, quote, cult of discord that provoked the bitter struggle between Narodism, that nebulous ideology of the democratic bourgeoisie, woven of socialistic dreams, and Marxism, the ideology of the proletariat? Nonsense, gentlemen. You only make yourselves ridiculous by saying such things, by continuing to regard as an insult the Marxist view that Narodism and your social revolutionism are essentially bourgeois democratic. We shall inevitably argue, defer, and quarrel also in the future revolutionary committees in Russia. But surely we must learn from history. We must not have unexpected, unintelligible, and muddled disputes at a time when action is called for. We must be prepared to argue on fundamental issues, to know the points of departure of each trend, to anticipate possible unity or possible antagonism. The history of revolutionary epochs provides many, all too many instances of tremendous harm caused by hasty and half-baked experiments in, quote, fighting unity, end quote, that sought to lump together the most heterogeneous elements in the committees of the revolutionary people, but managed thereby to achieve mutual friction and bitter disappointment. We want to profit by this lesson of history. Marxism, which to you seems a narrow dogma, is to use the quintessence of this historical lesson and guidance. We see the independent, uncompromisingly Marxist party of the revolutionary proletariat the sole pledge of socialism's victory, and the road to victory that is the most free from vacillations. We shall never, therefore, not even at the most revolutionary moments, forego the complete independence of the Social Democratic Party or the complete intransigence of our ideology. You believe this rules out fighting unity? You are mistaken. You can see from the resolution of our Second Congress, we do not renounce agreements for the struggle, and in the struggle of Verpiad, number 4. We stress the fact that the beginning of the revolution in Russia undoubtedly brings close to the moment when such agreements can be practically implemented. A joint struggle of the revolutionary social democrats and the revolutionary elements of the democratic movement is inevitable and indispensable in the era of the fall of the autocracy. We think that we should serve the cause of future militant agreements better if, instead of indulging in bitter recriminations, we sanely and coolly weighed the conditions under which they would become possible and likely limits of their jurisdiction, if one may use the term. We began this work in period number 3, which we undertook a study of the progress of the Socialist Revolutionary Party from Narodism to Marxism. Quote, the masses took to arms themselves, end quote. Revolucionaria Rosia wrote in connection with the 9th of January. Quote, sooner or later, without doubt, the question of arming the masses will be decided, end quote. Quote, that is when the fusion between terrorism and the mass movement to which we are striving by word and deed in accordance with the entire spirit of our party tactics will be manifested and realized in the most striking manner, end quote. We should remark parenthetically that we would gladly put a question mark after the word deed, but let us proceed with the quotation. Quote, not so long ago, before our own eyes, these two factors of the moment were separate, and this separateness deprived them of their full force, end quote. What is true is true, exactly. Intelligentsia, terrorism, and the mass movement of the working class were separate, and this separateness deprived them of their full force. That is precisely what the revolutionary social democrats have been saying all along. For this very reason, they have always been opposed to terrorism and to all the vacillations towards terrorism, which members of the intellectualist wing of our party have often displayed. For this reason, precisely, the old Iskra took position against terrorism when it wrote in issue number 48. Quote, the terrorist struggle of the old type was the riskiest form of revolutionary struggle, and those who engaged in it had the reputation of being resolute, self-sacrificing people. Now, however, when demonstrations develop into acts of open resistance to the government, the old terrorism ceases to be an exceptionally daring method of struggle. Heroism has now come out into the open. The true heroes of our time, now the revolutionaries who lead the popular masses, which are rising against their oppressors. The terrorism of the Great French Revolution began on July 14, 1789, with the storming of the Bastille. Its strength was the strength of the revolutionary movement of the people. That terrorism was due, not to disappointment in the strength of the mass movement, but, on the contrary, to unshakable faith in its strength. The history of that terrorism is exceedingly instructive for the Russian revolutionary, end quote. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The history of that terrorism is instructive in the extreme. Instructive, too, are the quoted passages from Iskra, which refer to an epoch of 18 months ago. These quotations show us in their full stature the ideas which even the socialist revolutionaries, under the influence of the revolutionary lessons, would like to arrive at. They remind us of the importance of faith in the mass movement. They remind us of revolutionary tenacity, which comes only from high principles and which alone can safeguard us against the, quote, disappointments, end quote, induced by a prolonged apparent standstill of the movement. Now, after the 9th of January, there could be no question on the face of it, of any, quote, disappointments, end quote, in the mass movement, but only on the face of it. We should distinguish between the momentary attraction evoked by a striking display of mass heroism and steadfast, reasoned convictions that link inseparably the entire activity of the party with the movement of the masses, owing to the paramount importance which is attached to the principle of the class struggle. We should bear in mind that the revolutionary movement, however high its level since the 9th of January, still has many stages to pass through before our socialist and democratic parties will be reconstructed on a new basis in a free Russia. And through all these stages, through all the vicissitudes of the struggle, we must maintain the ties between social democracy and the class struggle of the proletariat, unbroken, and we must see to it that they are continuously strengthened and made more secure. It seems to us, therefore, a gross exaggeration for Revolucionaria Rosia to assert that, quote, the pioneers of the armed struggle were swallowed up in the ranks of the roused masses, end quote. This is the desirable future rather than the reality of the moment. The assassination of Suryi in Moscow on February 17th, 4th, which has been reported by telegraph this very day, is obviously an act of terrorism of the old type. The pioneers of the armed struggle have not yet been swallowed up in the ranks of the roused masses. Pioneers with bombs evidently lay in wait for Suryi in Moscow, while the masses in St. Petersburg, without pioneers, without arms, without revolutionary officers, and without a revolutionary staff, quote, flung themselves in implacable fury upon bristling bayonets, end quote. As this same Revolucionaria Rosia expresses it, the separateness of which we spoke above still exists, and the individual intellectualist terror shows all the more strikingly in inadequacy in face of the growing realization that, quote, the masses have risen to the stature of individual heroes, that mass heroism has been awakened in them, end quote. Revolucionaria Rosia number 58. The pioneers should submerge among the masses in actual fact, that is, exert their selfless energies in real inseparable connection with the insurgent masses, and proceed with them in the literal, not figurative, symbolical sense of the word. That this is essential can hardly be open to doubt now. That it is possible has been proved by the 9th of January and by the deep unrest which is still smoldering among the working class masses. The fact that this is a new, higher, and more difficult task in comparison with the preceding ones cannot and should not stop us from meeting it at once in a practical way. Fighting unity between the Social Democratic Party and the Revolutionary Democratic Party. The Socialist Revolutionary Party might be one way of facilitating the solution of this problem. Such unity will be all more practicable the sooner the pioneers of the armed struggle are swallowed up in the ranks of the insurgent masses. The more firmly the socialist revolutionaries follow the path which they themselves have charted in the words. Quote, "May these beginnings of fusion between revolutionary terrorism and the mass movement grow and strengthen. May the masses act as quickly as possible, armed cap a pie with terrorist methods of struggle." End quote. With a view to bringing about speedily such a fighting unity, we take pleasure in publishing the following letter, which we have received from Georgy Gapon. Quote, "An open letter to the socialist parties of Russia. Quote, the bloody January days in St. Petersburg and the rest of Russia have brought the oppressed working class face to face with the autocratic regime, headed by the bloodthirsty Tsar. The great Russian Revolution has begun. All to whom the people's freedom is really dear must either win or die. Realizing the importance of the present historic moment, considering the present state of affairs, and being above all a revolutionary and a man of action, I call upon all the socialist parties of Russia to enter immediately into an agreement among themselves and to proceed to the armed uprising against Tsarism. All the forces of every party should be mobilized. All should have a single technical plan of action, bombs and dynamite, individual and mass terror, everything that can help the popular uprising. The immediate aim is the overthrow of the autocracy, a provisional revolutionary government which will at once amnesty all fighters for political and religious liberties, at once arm the people, and at once convoke a constituent assembly on the basis of universal, equal, and direct suffrage by secret ballot. To the task, comrades. Onward to the fight. Let us repeat the slogan of the St. Petersburg workers of the 9th of January, freedom or death. Delay and disorder are now a crime against the people, whose interests you are defending. Having given all myself to the service of the people, from whom I myself am sprung the son of a peasant, and having thrown in my lot irrevocably with the struggle against the oppressors and exploiters of the working class, I shall naturally be heart and soul with those who will undertake the real business of actually liberating the proletariat and all the toiling masses from the capitalist yoke and political slavery." This is Georgy Gapon. On our part, we consider it necessary, and so this is back to Lenin now. On our part, we consider it necessary to state our view of this letter as clearly and as definitely as possible. We consider that the agreement it proposes is possible, useful, and essential. We welcome the fact that Capone speaks explicitly of an agreement, since only through the preservation of complete independence by each separate party on points of principle and organization can the efforts at a fighting unity of these parties rest on hope. We must be very careful in making these endeavors not to spoil by vainly trying to lump together heterogeneous elements. We shall inevitably have to getrennt marschieren, march separately, but we can vereinschlagen, strike together, more than once and particularly now. It would be desirable, from our point of view, to have this agreement embrace the revolutionary as well as the socialist parties, but there is nothing socialistic in the immediate aim of the struggle, and we must not confound or allow anyone ever to confound the immediate democratic aims with our ultimate aims of socialist revolution. It would be desirable, and from our point of view essential, for the agreement that, instead of a general call for, quote, individual and mass terror, end quote, it should be stated openly and definitely that this joint action pursues the aim of a direct and actual fusion between terrorism and the uprising of the masses. True, by adding the words, quote, everything that can help to the popular uprising, end quote, Gapon clearly indicates his desire to make even individual terror subservient to this aim. But this desire, which suggests that the idea that we noted in Revolutionaria Rossiya, number 58, should be expressed more definitely and embodied in absolutely unequivocal practical decisions. We should like, finally, to point out, regardless of the realizability of the proposed agreement, that Capone's extra party stand seems to us to be another negative factor. Obviously, with so rapid a conversion from faith in the Tsar and petitioning of the Tsar to revolutionary aims, Gapon was not able to evolve himself for immediately a clear revolutionary outlook. This is inevitable, and the faster and broader the revolution develops, the more often will this kind of thing occur. Nevertheless, complete clarity and definiteness in the relations between parties, trends, and shades are absolutely necessary if a temporary agreement among them is to be in any way successful. Clarity and definiteness will be, and definiteness will be, I'm not sure how to say that word, definiteness will be needed at every practical step. They will be the precondition for definiteness and definiteness in the absence of vacillation in the real practical work. The beginning of the revolution in Russia will probably lead to the emergence upon the political arena of many people, and perhaps trends representing the view that the slogan, quote, revolution, end quote, is for, quote, men of action, end quote, a quite adequate definition of their aim and the method of operation. Nothing could be more fallacious in this opinion. The extra position, which seems higher or more convenient or more diplomatic, is in actual fact more vague, more obscure, and inevitably fraught with inconsistencies and vacillations in practical activities. In the interests of the revolution, our ideal should by no means be that all parties, all trends and shades of opinion fuse in a revolutionary chaos. On the contrary, the growth and spread of the revolutionary movement is constantly deeper penetration among the various classes and strata of the people, will inevitably give rise, all to the good, to constantly newer trends and shades. Only full clarity and definiteness in their mutual relations and in their attitude towards the position of the revolutionary proletariat can guarantee maximum success for the revolutionary movement. Only full clarity in mutual relations can guarantee the success of an agreement to achieve a common immediate aim. This immediate aim is outlined quite correctly in our opinion. In Gapon's letter, namely, number 1, the overthrow of the autocracy. 2, a provisional revolutionary government. 3, the immediate amnesty to all fighters for political and religious liberties, including, of course, the right to strike. 4, the immediate arming of the people. And 5, the immediate convocation of an all-Russian constituent assembly on the basis of universal, equal, and direct suffrage by secret ballot. The immediate translation into life by the revolutionary government of complete equality for all citizens and complete political freedom during elections is, of course, taken for granted by Capone. But this might have been stated explicitly. It would be advisable also to include in the general policy of the provisional government the establishment everywhere of revolutionary peasant committees for the purpose of supporting the democratic revolution and putting into effect its various measures. The success of the revolution depends largely on the revolutionary activity of the peasantry itself, and the various socialist and revolutionary democratic parties would probably agree on a slogan such as we have suggested. It is to be hoped that Capone, whose evolution from views shared by a politically unconscious people to revolutionary views proceeds from such profound personal experiences, will achieve the clear revolutionary outlook that is essential for a man of politics. It is to be hoped that his appeal for a militant agreement for the uprising will meet with success, and that the revolutionary proletariat, side by side with the revolutionary democrats, will strike at the autocracy and overthrow it all the more quickly and surely with the least sacrifices. Okay, yeah, so this is a militant agreement for the uprising. This was published in 1905, February 21st, 1905, by V.I. Lenin. So yeah, well, thank y'all for tuning in. You know, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Tumblr, Medium, all of these are Marxists. Y'all can hit me up there. Follow the page, subscribe, hit the notification bell, like Facebook, all that. So yeah, well, thank y'all for tuning in, and y'all have a great day, and Dodata Goy.